And as you can see, I am a customer experience consultant at ClickTale. Just to give you a little bit of background about the company and myself, ClickTale has been in the market for about 6 years now, and we are an in-page analytics company. We basically monitor every interaction that's happening within a page. We work with a lot of page-to-page analytics as partners, basically giving you the idea what people or what visitors are doing on your site through mouse clicks, movements, hovers, hesitation, interactions, etc. To give you a little bit of an idea of who we work with hundreds of Fortune 500 companies around the world. I've been at the company for about 2 years now, and I've worked with several different countries, constantly improving websites' performances. Just to give you a little bit of background of how I work at the company, I'm using ClickTale on a daily basis, several times a day, working with every single one of my companies, basically giving insights specifically and generally what people are doing, how people are doing this, and most importantly, why people are having these interactions. So the purpose of today's webinar is really to give you some more insights on how to improve your site performance. As I mentioned, this is something that I deal with on a day-to-day basis for a long time now, and it's really important for me to share with you how you can also gain this experience just from some simple interactions and some simple quick points. Okay? So we're going to go ahead and get started. There are people on the call from our side who are going to be taking down any questions if you have any that come along the way, so please don't be shy. I encourage you. And we'll be doing this throughout the whole entire presentation, as well as we'll take some breaks for questions as well as at the end. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so there are 4 different signifiers that I like to focus on in order to understand how to improve your site performance. One is JavaScript errors, as you can see, engagement time, unsuccessful call to actions, and content overload. I'm going to start with JavaScript errors. I think this is probably one of the most simple areas to really drill down and understand why your visitors aren't converting, why your visitors are having issues interacting on the site. And it's a basic quick fix in order to have instant increase in conversion. Okay. So first I just wanted to show you an example of a customer that has worked with us for quite some time now. They're an insurance site. They have several sites for different countries throughout the world. And basically their idea when they first came to us is to look on increasing their conversion. This is a type of company that is constantly conducting A/B testing in order to improve their conversion, in order to improve their user experience. But basically what was surprising for them is simply just by looking at recordings and looking at where some JavaScript errors are occurring, they instantly increase their conversion. And I'm going to show you a couple ways of how they did this. So the first way that they did this is they drilled down into the recordings themselves, into the playback. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with ClickTale, there is a section that we do have in the tool in your account where you can actually look at every single visitor's interaction in terms of an actual recording, as though you're sitting right next to them, looking over your shoulder, basically sitting right in front of the computer with them. So what this particular client did is they drilled down into the recordings themselves. They segmented, meaning that they filtered out by the JavaScript error, and they also found the location of the error. So as you can see in this area over here, this particular visitor actually found out that this visitor that was on their site experienced a JS error. It happened on their home page. And basically what they did is once they open up this recording, simply by pressing play over here, they see exactly where and when the JavaScript error is occurring. In this case, and I'm just showing an example right here, not the actual client's account, of course. In this case, they actually hovered over the little I highlight over here, and this appeared to show them the actual location of the JavaScript error. Simply by showing them which line of code the JavaScript error was occurring in, they were able to go back to their developers, go back to their code, fix the situation, and they had an immediate jump in their conversion. The next step that they did is they used the other report that we have called Form Analytics. And this is something where you can drill down. Again, for those of you who don't know, you can drill down into every single step of your form. So whether you want to look at people that have landed on the page, interacted, tried to submit, and then successfully submitted, you can also look at the negatives. And this is what I always tell my clients to be looking at as a consultant. These people can now look and see visitors that have left without any interaction, so perhaps been intimidated by a page, by a form if it's too long perhaps, visitors that interacted but didn't submit, or visitors that actually tried to submit but failed. This is what they focus on, and this is what I always highlight to my clients. These are people that want to submit that information. They want to submit their private details. They want to submit their credit card information, but for some reason they're being blocked, whether it's due to loading time, whether there's just a general error that's occurring on the call to action element itself, and that's exactly what occurred to them. So simply, just by watching those recordings, and again, looking at that location of the JS error, they had an immediate jump in their conversion. Lastly, what they did is they used the site reports. And just to show you exactly what they were looking at specifically, they were looking at stats about their errors. So they can start to understand and target where else might these errors, these JavaScript errors or different types of errors, be occurring on their page. So this is a more advanced version of the JavaScript errors report that we have. And basically they looked at the actual locations, they looked at percentages from browsers, and they also looked at the different types of errors, as you can see down here. All of these contributed to that jump in conversion simply just by drilling down and looking at different types of errors through a simple recording. Okay, I'm going to answer one or two questions right now that have come up right off the bat. Just one second, there's still some more coming in. Someone asked for a smaller site, what does ClickTale recommend is the first thing to look at? Generally, there's a lot of things that you can look at. It really depends on which type of industry you're coming from. If you're looking at e-commerce, let's say you're looking at someone purchasing products from your site, it's really important, and we'll talk about this in just a moment, where your call to action is lying and what are people interacting with besides your call to action. And you can see that through the mouse movements within ClickTale. You can see that are people clicking on elements that aren't necessarily clickable. So many times we design sites, and again, I'll talk about this later on, we design sites where we think that this is what the visitor wants to see. We think that this is what's attractive to the visitor. However, we need to be designing sites based off of what visitors' interactions are. So the complete reverse. And this is a lot of the teachings that we're trying to brand off into our clients, and basically show them and understand that we need to be building sites based upon what our visitors think that we're supposed to be doing, not what we think that our visitors are going to be doing. Okay? The other question that just came in is, will the ClickTale code affect site performance? Absolutely not. The ClickTale code does not affect any site performance. I work with, I mentioned several, quite a handful of big Fortune 500 companies. Some of the bigger companies in the world never had a problem with this. There should be no reason why there's a situation for affecting site performance. Okay. We're going to move right on to another issue that I like to be focusing on is engagement time. For those of you who aren't familiar with engagement time, a lot of the times when we focus on analytics, we're focusing on how long the page has been open for. Now, this is giving us an indication, that level of interest, but however, not entirely. This is showing us that if a visitor has their page open for, let's say, 2 hours, we think to ourselves, wow, this is great. This visitor is really interacting with my site. I really got the message across. I really have some strong communication. They're very interested. However, that's not necessarily the case most of the time. A person can open up their page, and I'm sure that you've done this when you're shopping online, when you're looking at different sites for traveling, when you're just doing some research, or even just simply reading the news, and then you walk away and go have a cup of coffee, or you have to run into a meeting, and your page is still open. That doesn't mean that the visitor is interacting with it. So what we do is we like to look at engagement time or attention time. We like to focus on what is that level of interaction. How long are people not just having the page open for, but actually interacting, moving their mouse, clicking, scrolling, hovering, any type of proof to show that there is evidence that the visitor is there, interacting, and showing interest in the page, not just having the page open. So this is something that I always encourage my visitors to be focusing on. I always encourage my clients to be focusing on. Just to show you another example, I work with a content site, and it's a media site, basically, again, also globally, hosting several different types of media throughout the world. And basically, their main goal when they first came to ClickTale, when they first started working with me, is that they wanted to increase their engagement time and their scrolling distance. So basically what we did, after looking at not just the mouse move heat map, not just the click heat map, but focusing on these two heat maps as well, the attention and the scroll reach, we came up with the idea of introducing something called an infinitive scroll bar. I know there's several different types of terms for this. For those of you who aren't familiar what an infinitive scroll bar is, once you move further down the page, your top bar menu will continue to move with you. And basically, simply by including this simple fix, they increase their engagement time by 70% and increase their scrolling distance by 11%. For those of you who are not in the content industry, this is huge. This is how the content industry measures most of their conversion. It's usually through the level of interaction, how far down people are scrolling, and the page count itself. So this was a huge jump for them. And just to show you an example, again, I'm just taking this off of the ClickTale site. What you want to be looking at when you're working with the attention and the scroll reach heat map is you want to see which areas are showing higher levels of attention. So again, that area where people are moving their mouse, clicking, scrolling, showing levels of interaction. But also you want to see what percentage of my page views or what percentage of my visitors are actually reaching that part of the page. So you can see in this area over here, and this is actually the terms and conditions, more so the disclosure part of our terms and conditions agreement on our page. Our attention is pretty high at 17 seconds, and I'll talk about what your high and low references for attention should be. But you can see that only 48% of my page views have actually reached this part of the page. So this is an indication for me where I actually need to move this area up to an area closer to above the fold, closer to above that initial screenshot, so more people will have more efficiency in seeing this part of the page, and that people, because I already know that these people are interested in it, they have a high engagement time, a high attention time. So simply by doing little moves like this, or having a page that has a lot of content like this, including an infinitive scroll bar, can easily increase your engagement time and increase your scrolling distance for those content pages. As I mentioned, there are different levels of measuring engagement time, and this is relevant per industry. So just to show you some examples, I pulled up one e-commerce site and I pulled up one content site. I'm sure you can recognize both sites. And basically, the way that we like to measure engagement time is that if you have an engagement time of 15 seconds or more, for content, this is contributing to someone who is doing deep or thorough reading. For an engagement time of a visitor who is less than 15 seconds, this is someone for a content site that we can consider doing more so quick scanning. Now, these are the two differences that I would like to focus on. For deep reading, these are people that are showing interest. We've caught their attention. They know the purpose of this site, and they want to find out more. It's easy to navigate through. For those that have the lower level of engagement time of 15 seconds and doing more so of a quick scanning, these are people that are not going to add to your conversion, that are not going to add to your page count. If they do add to your page count, they're probably not immediately knowing what they're looking for. We didn't make that message clear. What is the purpose of my site? Why do I have all this content on it? And what is the purpose of this content? However, for e-commerce, it's actually the exact opposite. For those that have an engagement time more than 15 seconds, it actually shows a level of hesitation. Because think about it, when you go to make a purchase, whether it's a shirt or whether it's something technical or a computer online, you know exactly what you want to be looking for. You've done the research ahead of time. You've gone onto the site. You know exactly that you're going for a computer. You have this amount of money, and you want to make this decision and do the research a little bit more on this product. You're not going to get sidetracked by buying a mouse or a speaker or an extra wire for your computer. You're very focused on what you go ahead and do. So those that come in and have a higher level of engagement time are actually showing some hesitation, or it can also just be browsing. For those that have a lower level of engagement time, these are the people that are showing confidence. These are people that are going to fastly and efficiently contribute to your conversion. These are going to be people that are ready to make that purchase, that are ready to make that submission button, and are going to move on to the next step in the conversion. Okay? The next section that I'm going to go on to looking is unsuccessful call to actions. And this is something that's extremely common throughout the industry. It doesn't really matter what you're selling, how you're selling it, but the call to action itself is extremely important. So what we use a lot for call to actions and to monitor how they're working, me specifically, I'm using mouse move and click heat maps. What I'm showing you right now is another e-commerce site of ours. And basically what they did is they conducted a test for certain call to actions. They tested the different positionings of it and the content itself of the call to action. So you can see this is before the test where their original call to action was, just so you can see there's an image over here, some content, and then the call to action itself. Again, we have the image over here, then the content has moved over to the side, as well as the call to action element has moved over to the side. This is after the test. Basically, by just repositioning the actual CTA, they redesigned the color and they redesigned the message to make it more action-based, to make it more understanding for what the visitor is supposed to be doing. They had it jump and increase in conversion. And just to show you these conversions, this was their conversion prior to the change at 75%, moving from step 1 to step 2 in their conversion funnel. But the second funnel shows after the change in the test was actually at 83%. And then the way that they did this is they just made the actual path that they needed to show for people visiting throughout the site through the entire journey. And for those who are in the enterprise account, they segmented by the event of someone checking on this button. So it was customized for them. So again, they segmented by the event, they saw the instant increase in conversion, and then on top of that, they just drilled down into these watch buttons and they saw why it was happening. They saw why the change from a certain color, or why the message, or why the repositioning added to each one of those conversion bases. I see that we're having a few questions come in. One of the questions that I see is, how do I know if my pages have too much data? This is something we're just going to jump to in just a couple minutes, so just bear with me. And then the other question is there such a thing as too many or too little links? It really depends, again, on how your site is being built. You really want to make sure that you have the main focus of the page as straight and as basic as possible. It's really important to make sure that the message is clear, as I mentioned before. Okay. Just moving on to the next page, just to show you how proper CTA positioning works. So this is, again, going into, am I getting the message clear across? I've shown an example of a website that we're just going to go into in just a moment, just to give you guys an understanding. This is actually my parents' website. And just to show you something from real time, they have no analytics on their site whatsoever. And basically, as their daughter, being an analytics consultant, it's really important for me to show them and to show everyone else exactly what is being done wrong. And these are very, very common mistakes through every single industry. So just to show you, it's very important to work with visitor eye movement. And for those of you that aren't familiar, it starts at the top left and it works with the bottom right. So we're moving as we scroll down with the page. This is very common in the content industry. You really want to make sure you have a very strong CTA message, a very strong message for your call to action. You always, always, always want to be testing. You always want to be testing different colors. Certain colors give off different emotional reactions. Additionally, you want to make sure that your CTA, your call to action, is strong and it stands out. And this is probably Design 101. Always make sure your call to action, if you do have one, is above the fold. You never want to make your visitors work for what they're looking for. Okay. Lastly, what I want to go over is content overload. Again, we're going to look at my parents' website, and just so you know, this is a law firm. Many of their clients are from overseas. They don't speak fluent English, but you can see that this page is constant content. There's a lot of color. I don't know where their CTA is to schedule a consultation. I don't know what the purpose of this site is. I don't know where I should be clicking. And actually, just so you understand, there is a picture up at the top of the page, many people think that this is clickable. I've just added on Google Analytics and ClickTale on their site, and we're seeing common mistakes that happen in the industry. You can see that their call to action is over here on the left side, and it's in red. Theoretically, what they should be doing is they should be moving their call to action over here, somewhere on the bottom right side, to work with that visitor eye movement. And we shouldn't be working in red. Red is a very scary color. It can tell people to stop, don't click on this button. Additionally, I asked my parents, why did you put so much information on one page? And I said, it's great that everything is above the fold. However, the situation is they thought that everything was important, which is probably the most common factor that happens with every single client that I work with. And basically, it's really important to make sure that you choose and you select only the crucial information that needs to be at the first part of the page. It's okay to have different sections of a page. It's okay for people to move from page to page if you're not counting page count. It's just really important to make sure you have one focus per page. Okay? Another area to be looking at what visitors are doing before they leave a page, because this is something that happens a lot in terms of content, when there is content overload. You're not really sure what are people doing right before they leave, what are people looking at last right before they leave. So that's why we have this tool in ClickTale called hard bounce, medium bounce, soft bounce. It's for our bounce rate analysis. And basically, if we're looking at someone that has a hard bounce, these are people that I always tell my clients to be focusing on, for people to see what are they looking at right before they leave that page, before they have, once they reach that very low level of engagement time. What's the first thing that's catching their eye? And those are the images, those are the pieces of content, those are the locations that we need to be emphasizing for our visitors, because again, they're telling us what's catching their eye first before us designing it for them. Okay? I see that there's a couple more questions coming in. I want to make sure that I take them. Just one second. Someone asked, which works best, the left or the right side, left or right side navigation? It really depends on the industry. It's dependent on what your typical website is on. I'm more than happy to help you if you want to email me privately afterwards. Just one second, we're having some more questions come in. Okay, someone asked me to review the events in the funnels again. Okay, just so you can understand, there are different ways of segmenting different funnels. So you can segment by new versus returning visitors. You can segment by different browsers that people might be using. By using specific events, what we're doing is we're customizing any type of image, any type of call to action, any type of content that might be interesting to you in order to look at how are people interacting with this specific element. And that's exactly what this client did over here. They segmented by the button itself, and from there they were able to understand the differences in conversion simply by tagging whatever they would like to be tagged. In this case, it was the CTA button, before moving on. All right, there seems to be a couple other questions, but first of all, I'd like to thank you so much for joining. The session will be online. If you have any other questions, please feel free to email me or feel free to email the rest of the team, and I'm more than happy to help you with consulting on your site or answer any general questions that you have about your site as well. So again, thank you so much.